Hi there YouTube, thank you for watching the Sheldrake channel. Today we're going to be doing a disassembly and field stripping of the M1A rifle. Tools that you're going to need, but are not necessary for the job to be done, are your standard GI tool that should come with your rifle. This is, like I said, not necessary, but if you're going to go on without it, it's highly advised that you get a hex socket or a hex wrench to help you with the disassembly process. You'll later find out in this video that this is for disassembling the gas assembly. Now before we begin, I'm going to move the camera into a better angle, but before that I'm going to safety check this rifle to make sure that it's not loaded. When handling firearms, always make sure that you do so safely and follow all safety precautions. Okay, now that the rifle has been safety checked, what we're going to do is we're going to cock the rifle to the rear and lock the hammer in the rearward position. What that does is to alleviate any sort of pressure that may be acting on this trigger guard that will make disassembly slightly harder. Now that you've done that, you can actually go ahead and take this trigger group assembly off by hand simply by pulling this section of the trigger guard rearwards and down. Now, if you haven't gone that path and cocked the hammer to the rearward position, what you might want to use is the GI tool, which has this half rod that sticks out. In that case, all you have to do is you stick this rod right here into the hole in the trigger guard at the rear. And you simply leverage that outwards and down. Once it comes loose, use your fingers, just open up the trigger guard and lock it in the forward position. Now it should be slightly loose and the hammer should be in the rearward position so that the trigger group can just fall right out. Now to take out the trigger group, all you want to do is you take a firm grasp with two fingers on your trigger guard in the downward position, place thumb tension on the stock of the rifle and pull straight down out away from the stock. Easily your trigger group assembly should come right out. Now I'm going to show you what I mean by locking the hammer back in the rearward position. I'm going to lock back the trigger guard like so and pull the trigger. So when it's sitting in the rifle with the hammer unlocked, it's going to be very hard to move this trigger guard. It's still doable, but now there's tension and pressure on that trigger guard that pushes it upwards towards the top of the receiver. And what this trigger guard does when you actually open it up is it actuates a spring and locks back the hammer so that when it's in the fully opened position, the hammer is cocked. So that is why I advocate cocking the rifle to the rearward position, so that once it's done and it's locked, you can see here that the trigger guard is nice and loose and there's no tension on it whatsoever. That just makes the job disassembling this rifle slightly easier. I'm going to put this to the side and we'll continue on with the rest of the field stripping. Now that the trigger guard has been removed, you're going to flip your rifle upside down and firmly grasp it by the receiver or the barrel to action. What you're going to do next is you're going to slap the top of the buttstock right there in a gentle motion so that you can unseat the barrel to action and receiver from the stock. I'm going to do this now and you can watch very closely at this crack as it comes unseated. Okay, once it's unseated, gently turn the rifle over again, place the stock down, and lift the receiver out of the stock. Place that down, move the stock out of the way. Okay, now with the receiver and the barrel upside down, we're going to move this op rod spring guide, which is the metal piece inside the spring right there, from the receiver. What that will allow us to do is subsequently move this op rod out of the assembled position. This op rod, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is what actuates the bolts inside the receiver. And as you can see right there, that's the bolt. So in order to take apart the op rod spring guide, you'll note on the left side of the receiver there is what is called the connector pin right here. All this pin has to do is come outwards so that the pin is no longer flush with the receiver. Take a look at the right side of the receiver, that's the pin right there. So in order to remove this, all you have to do is apply forward pressure to the op rod right there and lift this pin out, like so. Okay? It's easier to do this while the rifle is flat. I'm just doing this in order to get a good camera angle for you guys. Once it's in the most outward position, maintain control of the op rod and the op rod spring guide. Slowly lift upwards on the op rod guide and lift it to the rear. Now, as you can see, the op rod spring guide will come straight out of the op rod. And now there's nothing keeping in the op rod other than this spring guide, this op rod guide right here, and the rails in which it is seated into the receiver right here. Now, in order to remove this op rod assembly from the receiver, you'll take note of this little notch, and you'll move this op rod all the way to the rearward position until it is lined up with that square notch, which is right there. So as you can see, there's a lug. Maybe actually you can't see right now, but take my word for it. There is a lug at the end of this op rod right here that simply just sits out of that groove and will allow you to lift it so that it unseats from the receiver. Okay, as you can see, it's unseated and it just pops right out. Okay, so I'm just going to show you that one more time. So when it's in there, simply slide it to the rear, align it with the notch, lift upwards till it unseats from the receiver, and take note that that's the only thing holding you in at that point. All you want to do from here is rotate slightly so that you can clear the op rod guide right here. Put this aside, and you'll notice that your bolt is in the most rearward position. Slide the bolt forward, grab it by the roller right here, and just jiggle it so that you can lift it up and out. You might have to move the bolt about an inch towards the center right there in order to get it to angle in such a way. Once it's angled in this position, you can just simply pull up and out, and the bolt will come free of the receiver. Now, the final part of the field disassembly requires us to take apart the gas system for cleaning. Now, this is where your GI tool or your hex socket wrench will come in handy. This right here is the gas plug. At the tip of the gas plug is just a hex nut that you can use to loosen. This tool I usually use just to loosen it up. I've already done so at the beginning of this video so that I can film it while unscrewing with my hand. And just turn it counterclockwise till the gas plug is removed from the gas cylinder. Okay, place that over there. Now inside this gas cylinder, you'll notice at the tip here, you may not notice it because it goes back and forth, there's a silver piece of metal. That is your gas piston. You can push that in, and it should come straight out if you tilt the rifle forward. So I'm going to put this camera on a stable position and use both hands so that I can catch this guide rod as I catch the piston as I lift the action. And that is your gas piston. There you go, my friends. Now you have a completely field stripped M1A rifle. So again, you have your trigger group assembly, your bolts right here, operating guide, operating spring guide, gas plug, and finally, last but not least, your gas piston. That's all that's required for taking apart your M1A for cleaning.